Thank you. Hello, good evening. Thanks for coming out. That's wonderful to be here. As I showed, it's the first time that I'm ever in the store here. Actually, I was pouncing around all the time for years. I know this is a photographer's paradise here, but I have never been really in this place, nevertheless, here at this lectern. So I want to do two things with you tonight. I want to have a good hour with you. Oops, I'm going ahead of myself, I see. Let me just see. So, I want to spend a good hour with you going through this book. I don't show you everything of it. There's plenty more in it, but I want to give you an idea what I have done, how the conception of this book was, how it all works together. And at the second time, I just want to have a good time with you and see how much you are really New York buffs and know already what is in this book. So these are the two things I do want to accomplish with you. One thing I would like to do slightly different. If you recognize a place, I would like you to ask to interrupt me right away and say, hey, I know where this is so-and-so. But everything else, every other question, I would ask you to put that at the end of the lecture, and then I'm happy to answer some questions. But that makes sure that you don't fall asleep on me while we're going through this. So does anybody know already where we are here? Okay, Verrazano Bridge, wonderful. Okay, I show you one or two more. Do you know where this is? The Calatrava, right, under the World Trade Center, right at the bulkhead. So that is already the range we want to go through today. That's about 490 years from 1524 to 2014. But I won't take that much time to go through that. But this is basically the time span we can cover in New York. This is when Verrazano came the first time by. We know we have old buildings from structures going back to about 1600 still on Staten Island. And we are still building like crazy in the city. So there's plenty to see and to look at. Let me see. I give you another one, but I think you know already. Okay, but which one? The one on the left, very good. Yeah, that's Patience in front of the library. I give you two more, and then we go into medias res. Do you know? The Bull down on Wall Street, at Bowling Green, actually, very good. And I think this is easy for you all. The Peking and the Wavertree, very good. And we are looking down into John Street, into the jungle of the city. Okay, but there's a little bit more than guessing to this book, and this is what I want to explain a little bit to you. When I came here in 2006 to New York, it was luck, love, and serendipity which landed me just half a block from Tompkins Square, where I lived to the day, in the very center of what was once known as Kleindeutschland, or Little Germany. I made this outline of the map, which is considered mid-19th century, where the German population was concentrated, basically until they left in 1904 after the General Slocum disaster. So since I was a studied historian and art historian, this is really a treasure trove for me to see, I can dive into history and see what happened here in all these different layers of the city. And I just wanted to go around and learn the lay of the land and see what I knew already from movies and television about the city. We all have New York in our heads. Whether we live here or come the first time or so, we all have an idea of the city. And I think everybody has a different idea of the city, but we share so many iconic landmarks already. So sometimes I started out before I set up a walk, and I went on Google Maps in the satellite view, and I was just looking around, and sometimes you can mark remarkable discoveries. So what you see here is obviously Lower Manhattan, downtown, and I was just zooming around a little bit, and I came to a very peculiar rooftop. And we go a little bit closer, and there you see it. It's a landing strip on the rooftop of 77 Water Street with a real biplane on top of it. It's a fake landing strip. The 77 usually would indicate the degree angles of the orientation of the landing strip. So we know there's no 770 degrees. but it indicates the house number. But these were the things you could find just looking around on satellite maps, and the more there is to see if you walk down on the ground level. So what I did is I usually went as an adventurous pedestrian around day at night. I was at night on cemeteries. I walked by day through places where everybody walks, and I stumbled on some really wild stuff. For example, the Wild Parrots Inn. Where's this?
Greenwood Cemetery.
Very good. Yeah, Greenwood Cemetery. And where's this? Other wild animals.
Yeah, tunnel. They're marching the animals through for the circus.
Yeah, that's a Midtown Tunnel, and the elephants march over to Madison Square Garden. They were always discharged from the train in Queens and had to walk through the tunnel and then in a very quick walk along 34th Street at night. And at the end, there were up to 30,000 people seeing this March of the Elephants at night. But now they do that in Brooklyn, so they don't come into Manhattan anymore. But there are other new and old things. The obelisk in Central Park, very well. That took them nearly a year to erect that once it was delivered by ship. It's really 3,000 years old. They brought it over, but then they didn't know how to transport it into Central Park and set it up. Just looking up that story is absolutely fascinating piece of New York history. And then we have something very similar looking. Where is this?
Flushing Meadow.
In Flushing Meadow, yeah. There's the Science Museum and the Rocket Park. So we have a real space rocket here. And more on the political scene, who is this?
Lenin.
That's Lenin. Do you know where he's standing? Houston Street at the Red Square apartment building, right. As far as I know, that's the only freestanding Lenin in the city. He was brought in the early 90s from near Moscow. I forgot the name. What is his name? The developer who built this. Famous professor for sociology at the NYU. He built this as an apartment building, and he went to Moscow and found that in a dacha, in basically a weekend refuge, somebody had placed during Glasnost and Perestroika this Lenin in the garden, and they just bought it and brought it back to New York and put it on the roof. And here's another famous New Yorker, Peter Stuyvesant. And where is he located? Stuyvesant Park, yeah, that's on 2nd Avenue around 16th Street. So I think from 15th to 17th that stretches. And there's this beautiful tripod right in the middle of it. So, and my way of getting to know my new city when I came here in 2006 was I was walking, mostly with my wife, who is right here, sitting in the front. She's selling the books too. That's Kate. And we were walking around all the time, but what I found really vexing and nerve-wracking at times is she said all the time, oh, this used to be here, and this is gone, and there was McHale's, and there was that and that. And I got upset to a point where I said, wait a moment, I just come to the city. I want to get to know the city, not what it has been before. But I noticed then that within half a year, I was just chugging along and lamenting with her to say, oh my, this is gone. I knew there was that old shop which was 100 years there, and it's gone now. And we all know these dreaded signs which the fire department puts on buildings, which says that this is deemed an unsafe structure, nobody can enter anymore. So that means when you see this sign, the building is usually doomed and won't be repaired. And we often enough see something like this, where we have a beautiful old building and left, right, and center, they're pulling the new things up. Some of them are nice, some of them are not so nice. And my wife was right, New York was disappearing, and within a few months I was just singing along with her. And I think that is, I suppose, the day when I became a real New Yorker, when I started questioning about the loss of the city. Does anybody know where we are here, what this is? Cooper Union, yeah, it's one of the two new buildings they built recently. The other one is just north of it. In the neighborhood, it's nicknamed the Death Star. Because it just absolutely doesn't match into the neighborhood. It's just awful. And the funny thing was that the Wall Street Journal wrote about all these tech companies which are down there. In the Wanamaker building next to it, for example, is Facebook and AOL. Here moved, in the Death Star, moved IBM Watson into. And in the Wall Street Journal, they named the area not the East Village anymore, but they called it Midtown South. And I think it was not a joke, it was just a slip. So but we know in New York we have always these changes, and it goes sometimes in very fast cycles. I just recall this wonderful book from Berenice Abbott in the late 30s when she was taking these wonderful black and white photos documenting what was happening to the city with all skyscrapers growing, and was absolutely wild. And one of my favorite quotes for the city is that O. Henry once said, it will be a great place if they ever finish it, and I hope they will never do that, but there's quite some loss. So I divert a little bit here at this point and tell you where I'm coming from and why I have such an interest in history. I come from the German city of Aachen, which has about 250,000 inhabitants. It's 60 miles west of Cologne, at the border to Belgium and the Netherlands. Was settled around 2500 BC when people were hitting on flintstones, and was founded as a city basically by the Romans in the 1st century AD as a spa because they had hot springs there. And on my way to high school, which you see here in the foreground of the picture, and then you see the town hall in the middle and the cathedral in the back. On my way to it, I walked through about 1,200 years of history every morning through the middle-aged city walls. And this town hall had 52 German kings being crowned in there. So it all goes back very deep into history. And though it was nearly completely destroyed in the Second World War, and I ran into somebody who was a good friend of mine now, who was in this bomber group who flattened this city, and he's to the day one of my best friends. It's fabulous what history does. He lives here in New York too. I was more impressed than with all these kings and queens and everything else. This place was the capital of Charlemagne for the Holy Roman Empire. And he had diplomatic relations with the Caliph of Baghdad at that time. So around the year 800, Harun al-Rashid sent him a gift, an elephant, and some people said it was even a white elephant, but it was definitely an Asian elephant, who came all the way through northern Africa, was delivered to Aachen, where it's really cold in the winter. And it was kept in a place where I walked by every day to school. There was a little public park, and that was the spot where the elephant lived. So I had my imagination going wild every morning. Say, hey, hi, elephant, on my way to school, walking by the cathedral from the 8th century, and. So it was absolutely fabulous. So I came, I had two things to say. The first one is I'm digressing too much, and the second one is this explains why I have this historic interest in a place where I come and go. And when I met my wife and moved over here to New York, I said, I have to take time to understand where I am and what are the layers of history, what has happened here in this place, so to get a complete idea of what this is all about. And you see when you go to New York or you go to Boston how different the mentality is. And that goes all back into history, who were the people who came first. So this is one of the oldest structures, funnily enough, I could find in New York. That is the so-called Lovelace Fountain, which for a time obviously even served as a city hall, as a town hall. And that is on the premises of Goldman Sachs down in Pearl Street. And that dates back to the 17th century. I think the tavern was built in 1670. And Goldman Sachs, when they built the headquarters down there, were forced to conserve this somehow. So there are some more structures you can see down there. It's very interesting to walk around there. And everything else what comes is imported. So where are we here? What are we looking at? Any idea? That's the cloisters. Very good, yeah. So everything else then is getting more and more modern. We have something entirely different here. Do you know? That's the Standard Hotel. And you know the reputation of the Standard Hotel still has, yeah, I know. It's well known that there are some exhibitionists hanging around, so I was just standing there, not waiting for the nudes, but I was fascinated by the different colors of the curtains, and suddenly this thing opened up, and I thought, okay, let's see what happens now. And nothing happened, it was just open. But I love this as a shot. On the other hand, it shows me already something which is happening in the city. It all looks pretty much flat, unique, all the same, not much variety. I have the feeling that we are losing a little bit the diversity and the soul of the city through a lot of this new building. I still dearly miss the Cheyenne Diner here, opposite from us on the other side of the avenue. I used to go there all the time, and suddenly they ripped it down. I think there's nothing built to the day because they ran out of money. But the diner is gone, and we lose all these little nooks and crannies in the city, which are really lovely to know them and to put them into your daily life. So even before I moved to New York, I knew in the East Village a shoemaker. He was not a shoe repairman, but a shoemaker. And I brought my shoes from Germany over to let him fix them. And he took an enormous pride in his job. And he got also kicked out by a real estate developer who had at that time already 150 buildings. And I said, out with the old. I can make more money. I want to get rid of you all. And I found that a very heartbreaking experience. And I thought that was what started me walking around and documenting the one or other thing I could. So preservation seems to be here sometimes an unloved duty because it's in the way of profits. But on the other hand, I see that people are slowly getting more and more aware of it. There are people like Jeremiah Moss, the blogger, who makes his blog about the vanishing city of New York. There are photographers like James and Carla Murray, I don't know if you're familiar with them, who make this Storefront New York series. They have just their third book out in the series. So there's a lot happening that people start taking note. Oh, we are about to lose all these tiny little things, and how do we deal with this in the face of the development in the city? Okay, and what the danger is that we get something like this, which is entirely bland. It's still recognizable. Does anybody know? Say again? Down on the Delancey Street, right, the blue building. And what I didn't know as a new American was this thing on the left. I didn't notice that until I looked at the photo later again and saw it's from the Popeye restaurant chain. I think they make this southern fried food. And I thought, wow, I have seen this in Chicago, I've seen this in New Orleans, they all look the same, and this is what we get. When the big box stores move in and the chains move in, we can't differentiate it anymore. There's still plenty left in New York, which makes it very, very different, but sometimes it seems to be a bit much. And when you see about areas like Williamsburg or so, I didn't recognize them. I wasn't there for 2 years, and I get off the train, and I couldn't believe where I am. I thought, wow, that looks like suburbia here. It's unbelievable, suddenly. This was the very first photo I took when I thought I should start the series. Do you know where we are? Coney Island, and I heard already it's a cyclone, right? And I was intrigued first by the parking sign. You wouldn't find something like that in Germany in the first place. But then I looked at home on my screen on the photo, and I thought, I hate these shadow lines of the wires. But there's something else just hidden at the end of at the edge of the photo. There's something so iconic about New York that I can pinpoint exactly where we are in the city, and that is a fascinating thing. And let me see if I find something else like that. And this is how I started out putting this book together, and this is what I want to talk a little bit about. And still, I would ask you, if you recognize something, just interrupt me and say what you have. In the first place, I'll show you a little bit. This is the title page. We have seen this already. This is basically how the pages inside are. You see there are no captions, they're just page numbers. Because the guessing game would fall away if I had a caption there. But you can look it up if you don't know where we are. By the way, does anybody know where we are here?
Near Grand Central.
No, it's not Grand Central.
The bridge on 32nd Street between Macy's and Gimbel?
No, very close, but not bad.
Building on 20,
Yeah.
so 26.
Yeah, 25th. Very good. Yeah, that's a MetLife building.
I live there, so.
Okay. It's a beautiful Art Deco building. Funny story about it. They wanted to build that 100 stories high, the extension on the north, and ran out of money during the Depression. So now you have a 30-story building with 33 elevator banks in it. So everybody has basically his own elevator in this building. And the left one is the Marine Terminal on 23rd Street. So they're basically neighbors. Walking distance of each other. So my approach was then to say, okay, people can guess this, and if you are not sure where something is, you look up the index number on this map, and you see it's quite Manhattan-centric. And came to that point where I thought, okay, it should be for New York buffs and for tourists alike, and the tours are probably mostly around in Manhattan, so that's just the reason why. I mean, I'm getting around everywhere, but I thought these things are mostly iconic. Everybody knows them, and that was how the choice was made. And in the third part of the book, I made these little texts where I started explaining a little bit, because I found out so many interesting tidbits of history about everything that I thought, it would be a pain not to put this information in. I want to have these photos seen as photos, but it's too nice to omit this information. That's why I put that in the first place. So as a photographer, I would say I usually focus on landscapes and urbanscapes, seascape if you want. But it's basically for me about the human condition, because I think that people shape their surroundings through architecture, through sculpture, through painting, through all kinds, and make the world their own. And a lot, they create a world how they want to be seen, not necessarily who they are and what they are, but how they want to be seen. And I'm maybe not a good people photographer, but I'm interested in how do people stage themselves if they have the power and the money to do things like this. And I think that is a valuable approach. It's not like portrait photography, but it's something which deals with the human condition as well. So this is what I picked for my photography, and I think the book shows a little bit of this. How did I make this book? I had to set up some rules for that, because you imagine you come from a different country, and I was a journalist. I was writing for a newspaper. I set up an online edition for a national daily in Germany, the so-called Frankfurter Rundschau. And I came as a storyteller over here with an academic background. And I always did photography since I could walk, basically. But I had to streamline a little bit this approach to this book. And the one is the game approach. And about the other rules I put up in my head, I want to talk a little bit in the next 5 to 10 minutes. So to make that work for everybody, I thought every single photo in this book should have a unique, clearly identifiable location. It doesn't help to show you the ATM machine in Brighton Beach because it's in Russian, because you still don't know where it is, for example, but it has to be something you can recognize. So where are we here? That's Aachen, Washington Square, very good. This one?
42nd Street with the Tudor.
That is very good. Yeah, that's I call it the Tudor taxi, and I have another one which is the Tudor limo. The same in black, you see the Tudor buildings. Because there's this overpass on 42nd Street where you can look downstairs. And this is easy. That's the Manhattan Bridge, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so all these three would qualify because there's only one place in the city where that could be, and that is already important to know. So the second one would be, sure enough, we talk about the 5 boroughs and not somewhere else. So something like this would qualify. Where are we here?
Looking at the United Nations, it was probably in
It's the United Nations, that's right. And it's
what's in the foreground?
that's in the foreground. These are pilings on the ferry terminal on 34th Street when you stand at the East River. And you basically look from the water side up. This one is well known, I guess. Geary and Nouvelle buildings on West Street around 18th Street, yeah. Mm-hmm. So these are all easily identifiable to be in the boroughs, and though I love this photo, it didn't qualify because it was taken from beyond the borders. I had the chance to get out for a day to the Long Island Sound, and I saw this summery scene, and the heat was really rising up, and it was just a beautiful day, but this wouldn't qualify for it. Okay, the next one is I tried to make it so that it could work a little bit inspirational. So if you want to go to the same places and see what you see, because this is a very subjective view, on the city and how I encounter that. And you will certainly not encounter the same thing, but you will see it with very different eyes. I want it to be publicly accessible and that you can get there at no cost. So where are we here? It's, it's a love sculpture in 55th it is, 55th on 6th Avenue, yeah. And I thought, what should I do? Because this is so cliche. There are so many tourists all the time to try a photo of it. I think there are 39 of these sculptures throughout the world, all signed by Robert Indiana, and they're all valid and everything. And this one to photograph is a total pain because there's always a fruit vendor behind it, and he parks his cooling devices into the sculpture and everything. So I thought, okay, I take it with a cooling box and take it from the other side at least. Okay, that says basically where it is. It's just about if you know the location where we are here. Prince Street on the corner of Mercer, yeah. Fantastic bar to the day. Can be pretty rough in the morning, but it's a very interesting place. Had his own profile in the New Yorker. The Serbian ex-boxer who's running the bar usually. So if you're out for an adventure, go there after 2 o'clock in the morning. It's really wild. But that's part of walking around in New York, I think. So this is all publicly accessible, and here I made a little exception. I had to take some liberties because I could. Does anybody recognize where we are? What this is? Yeah, right, that's Broadway. It's between 48s and 49s. It's taken out of a hotel, and there was just a little window. I could barely squeeze the camera out and take a photo without seeing what I was really doing, but this came out pretty well, and it was part of a 180-degree photo. I have no better quality of this right now, but this is basically a handheld panorama out of the out of a little window, so I couldn't say no because I loved that photo so much it had to come into the book. Okay. People was the big question. As I said, I'm not a good people photographer, and I said, okay, I don't want to have the city cleaned out of people. They are part of it, of the fabric, but I don't want to put an emphasis on individuals, except one is in it. That's him. That's our neighbor George, who lives on our block, and he came with the right color pattern and everything marching through my frame. So I got a model release from him, and he is in the book. That's the only one. Does anybody know where we are, by any chance? That's a tricky one, if you're not familiar with it. That's right at Tompkins Square Park on East 9th Street, where the Cafe Pick Me Up was on the corner of Avenue A. And the mural is still there. The building is sold to one of the dreaded real estate developers. Pick Me Up is already out. The neighbors are out. There's still one shop left in it. And we have friends who live in that building who got relocated within the building. So it's all the horrors going on you can imagine in this building. Lincoln Center, very good. That's a Revson fountain. And the funny story behind that is, this is why I love to have photos of people in the book, when they're a little bit abstract, when it's not about the person itself, but they stand for something else. So if you get the idea that might be a dancer because we're at Lincoln Center, you're totally wrong. This is a shopping girl which is sitting there with her phone texting, and she has shopping bags next to her. But the silhouette made it, and I thought, lovely. I just want that. And that was my third approach, to have people in the book, to say I play around like a futurist, try to catch the movement of people. I'm standing, can you recognize where I am? Yeah, it's Central Park at the mall looking down south. And there was this group of joggers suddenly running to the frame, and there's this iridescent light flickering at high intensity, at a high frequency. And it was just beautiful. I shot a whole series that night. I just couldn't get away anymore. It was beautiful. Okay. The next thing would be sculptures, because they don't move. I can frame them easier. For me, it's just easier to get them in. Where are we here? Any idea? No, it's not.
23rd Is that 23rd Street? Is that
No,
sewer
it's
that-
no. Cold. Any other guesses? Otherwise,
Central Park is.
It's not in Central Park. This is. I tell you first who it is. This is Abraham Lincoln, and that's the only known sculpture of Abraham Lincoln on horseback. And he is on the inside of the arch at the Grand Army Plaza in Brooklyn. And on the other side is General Grant. And they're looking at each other and just sitting on the horse and riding along in the inside of the arch. It's a beautiful piece. Maybe this is better known.
This is Minerva. Riverdale?
No, it's not Riverdale.
No, Minerva
That is the Minerva, yeah. And you know where she is?
in Greenwood Park.
Very-
Greenwood Cemetery.
Greenwood Cemetery, very good. So here we have another kind of sculpture. Does anybody know where we are here? That is St. John the Divine, that's correct. And that's a beautiful carvings in the main portal of the building. And there are all kinds of scenes. I think there are two Frenchmen who built this. There is the description of the skyscrapers of New York. There is an explanation of how DNA works. There's a scene of a birth of a child. There are disasters and accidents shown in all these capitals on the columns. So you can spend hours there just standing in front of this portal and looking at the stories being told there. But I thought this is just beautiful. You find this beauty in totally unexpected areas in the city. Here's a little.
Supreme Court.
Yeah, very good. So you know that area very well, I see.
What did you say, sir?
It's the Supreme Court building on Madison Square. Madison Square.
Yeah.
It's 25th Street, right? And it's a beautiful building anyway. It's very compact, but it's plastered with figures. It has Confucius and all kinds of lawmakers and philosophers lined up on the roof line. It's absolutely a gem to look at for its architecture. And then I show you one more of the sculptures. Do you know where we are here?
That's a Picasso sculpture on the NYU campus.
Yeah, very good.
Washington Square.
Yeah, that's just south of Washington Square Park. It's a Picasso sculpture of Sylvette. She was a model for him in 1954. One of the few models he didn't fall in love with, but just used her as a model. And she started her own artistic career afterwards. And it was a small sculpture of steel about 2 feet high. And in 1968, a Norwegian sculptor, Nesjar, came and made a deal with Picasso to say, let's build this into this courtyard of the IMP buildings because they are brutalist. They are so hard. We have to counter that with something. And they built this beautiful sculpture in there. And you can walk around it, and it works wonderfully as a three-dimensional sculpture. One has to make choices, and you know, especially if you have a digital camera, there's always the seduction that you take more photos than you really need. And somebody asked me recently, how do you usually go about it? And I said, it really depends. If I go and have to take photos of a parade, I come home with 1,500 photos easily. If I go to a location where I have time to set up and to think my light and exposure and whatever, then I take 2 or maybe 3. And that is good enough for the day. So it's really all in our heads, but you still come home with a bunch of photos and have to cull it out. And the problem is always, how do you do that not to fall into cliches? What do you really envision? What do you want to see? And I was looking back at my rule book and I saw, where are we here? Madison Square Park, yeah, right? And I had the incredible chance to get in the very prow of the Flatiron building, to stand in the balcony, and took a shot down. This is why you see the shadow of the building right to our feet. And I thought, okay, but it's not publicly accessible, so tough, it doesn't go into the book. Too bad. Then there are ones which are just too generic, like this. I was joking around, this is where they keep the women in the winter. This is in Coney Island on the beach. A restroom, and it looked so locked up like a jail. I thought, okay, but nobody can identify this. It just doesn't have enough markers to tell you anything about it. That is Staten Island, yeah, very good. So you're one of the few people recognizing that right away. I would have had a problem to find a place where in New York this is. Yeah, it's Snug Harbor. There are these reenactors walking around in costumes and everything. It's a fabulous area. And I had no idea. I just stumbled into this looking for something entirely different. Okay, and this was another beautiful scene, was serendipitous as well. We were in Staten Island because you can't really recognize it. It's the Verrazano Bridge in the background. And there was Illuminale, this light festival, where you see experimental movies, light sculptures, all kinds of ways how people deal with light. And it's right next to the ferry station in this old Navy area. And there was this kid standing in front of a screen and obviously seeing the first time what happens if you play with your own shadow. And it was just a beautiful picture, but again, it didn't give enough to identify what was really going on.
But that looks like a Verrazano Bridge in the background.
That is the Verrazano Bridge, yeah. Some others were too temporary. These are the tiles, that's right. Where were they?
Sixth Avenue?
Yeah, right.
Wait, you said 7 people said 7 different things and you said yes. What
No, it's Greenwich Avenue on 7th, on the corner. Greenwich and 7th. And that is gone by now. And when I took that photo, I thought, it's not much to it, but it works because New Yorkers will recognize what this is and where it is. But I was afraid it was temporary, and by now it's all gone and ripped away. And I don't know if these tiles are still anywhere, if they're in the World Trade Center Museum or something. But I thought it was, again, for a certain time, something iconic in the city, but it wouldn't stand the test of time. It would be just wiped out like nothing else right away. Similar to this one. I don't know if you remember this.
those temporary waterfalls by the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah, very good. That was Temporary Waterfalls by Olafur Eliasson, a Scandinavian artist who built these 4 or 5 different waterfalls along the East River. And this just wouldn't work because too few people would remember this on the long run. And then something like this you stumble upon and you think, haha, it's funny, but there's no way of putting this into a book because you can't really nail it down. That was in front of a spa on Lexington Avenue, really somewhere in Midtown. You think, why do they build something like this here? But it was very funny. Okay, so, and then some other photos like this one is on 6th Avenue, right? The bulbous boxes. They just came too late and they didn't make it into the book anymore because I was running too late. So I give you here some other choices. Where are we now? Times Square, exactly. It's iconic enough, but it is so cliche that I thought I didn't want to have that really in. And there are so many different ways of seeing Times Square, and it's very easy to go loud and shrill and gaudy with it, but I didn't want to do that. I love this one. This is, I have to look up his name, I always forget it. George Cohen, give my regards to Broadway, a sculpture. And behind him is his screen, which just at the second when I took the photo switched from a photo of the skyline to a photo of the subway station underneath Times Square. This is why it looks so completely chaotic, because it's 2 photos at the same time, and it was just a lucky shot right at the right second. No, not even. I don't know what the exposure was, probably 125th or something. It just happened, and I just saw it on the screen what I got there. But again, it's too loud, too shrill. You find out immediately what it is. This one I ruled out because I thought nobody will probably ever look to the ground going around on Times Square. That's Times Square where Broadway cuts over 7th. That's why we have this weird angle from the subway exit there. But I settled then at the end on this one, where I thought this is a bit more unusual and it shows a very somber mood, which you wouldn't expect right away. Yeah, that's a puddle reflection right on Times Square again. I thought, okay, this is a photo of for me of Times Square. And I thought this is the fascinating thing. When you walk around as a photographer, you have all this variety in your head to see things in very different lights. I don't know if I would call myself a street photographer. I think because I don't photograph people that much, but there's something to it to say there are so many ways and layers of reception, what you can see in a place which people create, and that was my favorite in this. Okay, rule number 7. more thought about the book again to say, how do I make that easy for people who have never been here, who just know it from Sex and the City, or people who grew up here, which we have too. And how do we keep the balance between concretion and abstraction? So that's an easy one, I think everybody knows. Yeah, the Guggenheim Museum. And this one is easy too, I guess. The Flatiron Building, right? And I just click through a little bit.
No, it's in the Bronx.
No, it's not the Bronx. I heard the right answer. It's Smallpox Museum by Renwick and the 59th Street Bridge in the background. And
Where's the,
That's before it was renovated.
it's on
it's
Roosevelt Island?
it's before it's renovated. It's on Roosevelt Island, and we are standing just south of the Smallpox Museum, and that is by now secured and cleaned up a little bit, and the bridge is being painted. Yeah, and they make the beautiful Roosevelt Park there, FDR Park of the Four Freedoms. So it looks entirely different now. And this photo is, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old now, and it looked entirely different. It was a complete different city experience. And here we have some newer ones. Yeah, that's the Geary down in Lower Manhattan.
Where did you shoot? What did you shoot that?
That's a ginkgo tree where I'm standing. So I'm shooting between the leaves of the ginkgo tree. So it was, again, something I just found by walking by. To walk there and see, oh, I have the repetition there and the pattern. And this is how things sometimes come together. This is...
That's the Bronx.
No, not Brooklyn, not the Bronx. That is in Manhattan, I give you that. But where could that be? Famous buildings, too. It's a Sherry Netherland, right, with this wonderful tower house on top, and it casts a shadow onto the pier. So we have the two super-duper hotels on Fifth Avenue there, giving each other an impression. This is pretty well known, I guess. That's Gramercy Park, and we have Edwin Booth from the Players Club, who was shown here as Hamlet. That was after his brother killed Lincoln. His career was basically blast, and he made a reappearance some while later, opening a theater on 23rd Street, and coming out as Hamlet, and that brought him back into the limelight. Okay. I think we are nearly done here with this part. You know where this is? The planetarium. It's up on the Upper West Side. And it's beautiful, beautiful thing. The ferry terminal for the Staten Island ferry, right? And I find it's not easy to get on higher places to get a good vantage point often. I saw there are some photographers in the city who can bribe their way up on rooftops here and there, but it's increasingly difficult after 2001, I think, to get in there. We have friends who had rooftop access. They just got bumped out for basically nothing, and it's really hard. If you don't have a name or a big wallet to bribe your way around, you don't get much up on big heights. So now I give you 3 harder ones, and then we move on. Anybody knows where we are here? No takers?
This is the Exxon Standard building in the back.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it must be in the perimeter somewhere.
What did he say?
So he said it's the Exxon building, which you see in the background. That was the Standard Oil Company Central from John D. Rockefeller. What we are...
Downtown?
We are very downtown, yeah. We are in Lower Manhattan. We're at the end of Broadway. So we are... this is at the U.S. Customs House. And it's a sculpture by Daniel Chester French depicting America. And this is a native bird mask cut in stone. And I thought it was interesting.
Was it that clean or did you clean it up?
No, it is that clean. I didn't do anything. I just take photos. It is in good condition. Yeah. No, they did a wonderful job on it. I think they cleaned the whole building some years back. I remember it was on a scaffolding. Yeah, no. She's in good shape. The next one is a bit tricky, and that was fun putting this book together. What are we seeing here? Any idea?
It's in the Trump building?
No, it's not. Not Grand Central? No.
Rockefeller Center.
I didn't hear you.
Rockefeller Center.
Rockefeller Center? No, neither. Okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay. We are looking here at the sarcophagi of what's his name? Grant and his wife Julia Dent Grant, and Grant's tomb. So if you go down there, you can walk down there, and then you look between the marble sarcophagi back to the stairs. That's the view. Okay, and now I'll give you the hardest in the whole book. If you know that, you're really, really good. This is this one. Where could that be? Close. No.
Not one of the cat entrances at the Pratt Institute?
No, it is a cat entrance, but it's not at the Pratt Institute. We're here on Elizabeth Street in Little Italy, basically. And you know the old butcher Albanese with a red storefront on Elizabeth Street? This is exactly on the other side. There was another old butcher which has been turned into a gallery. And they have a gallery cat, which his name is Tom. And he has this little cat door in their entry door. And for Christmas season, they always hang a little wreath at the door. So I was walking by one day and thought, oh, beautiful. But I know I had to put that in for the New York buffs because they say, oh, the Guggenheim, I'm bored. And there they have something to chew on. Okay, we are nearly done with it. So as usual, photos, I think, win extremely when you clean them up and you reduce and cut the clutter out and try to keep it straight up. Where are we here? Yeah, very good, but what?
63rd Street?
Yeah, it's about there. It's the old Armory building, which is now the headquarters of the Parks Department, which has, by the way, a publicly accessible roof terrace, which I wholeheartedly recommend to hang out on the summer. And the building itself is really interesting because it has all these militaristic attributes all over. So here you see the railing of the stairs outside. The lamps on the outside are shaped as drums. There are old murals inside when you go into the building. So it's really fascinating to walk around. You can even get guided tours there. Any takers where we are here?
72nd and Broadway.
No, I see where you come from, but
57th and 5th?
no, neither.
Broadway. It's around 100.
It's not Broadway either, no. It's further downtown. We are back on Astor Place here, and it was for me a very nice triangle of this renovated kiosk. The entry kiosk has a famous movie scene in this taking of the Pelham 123, where you see this place before the kiosk was back in business there. And this is the building, this glass building is just to the south of it, and what we see mirrored is the old Wanamaker building, where nowadays Facebook has a central in it. Okay, and that is an easy one. I think you know all. That's the tram, right, on 59th Street Bridge, which by now has a slightly different shape. I noticed it's more square now. The old cab is still there? Okay, good. I didn't know that. Yeah. Now, I had a friend from Kentucky who lives now in the city, and when he moved into the city, I showed him around, and we were bicycling over there from Queens, and said, oh, let's take the tram back. And we went to the tram, and there was no tram, and we ran into a Swiss guy who said, no, I'm exchanging the cables. So this is operated by Swiss and French companies who are specialized in funiculars. Yeah, and they're still running it to the day. It was really interesting. Yeah. Okay, that's pretty easy, I guess. That's a race building right on Bryant Park. Very good. And you can reduce it much more than that.
61st and the East River?
Which one? The Grays?
No.
No.
The one you just showed, that.
This one? No. That's the Wonder Wheel in Coney Island, right? And they have taken the cabs off for the winter already. But I thought, again, this is one of these very iconic views of the city. You have basically three colors in the photo, and some straight lines, and the rounded line gives it completely away, and you can pinpoint exactly on a map where we are. And that is something I really love in New York. Capes Bay, very good. Yeah, that's the other IMP tower next to the one south of Washington Square Park. It's a similar settlement down there. Does anybody recognize what we are looking at here? The left thing is kind of iconic in the city. That's on 6th Street and 2nd Avenue, the Block Drugstore, which was once a chain, but it's run by the Carmine family, the Palermo family. An old drugstore, really old school, with a beautiful inside as well. And the thing on the right is a lantern pole made by a guy called Jim Powers, or known as Mosaic Man, who was a Vietnam veteran who lived for a long time as a homeless person on the streets, and cut a deal with Giuliani that he was, after the city was taking down all his artwork all the time, Giuliani allowed him then to keep 90 poles in the East Village filled up with his tiles. So he's working with these donated tiles and is retelling in them the story of the East Village. It's really fascinating. If you walk around with open eyes and you look at all these lantern poles, they're moving. Sometimes they get destroyed. He starts up somewhere else again. And when we had the development on Astor Place going on with the Death Star and the other building of Cooper Union, he went there and said, okay, they're taking the Alamo down, the famous turning cube by James Rosenthal. And he said, they say they do a renovation on this, but what will happen to my lantern poles? I don't trust them. I take my tiles down myself. So he destroyed all his artwork there and said, I will repurpose these tiles and bring them into another location and do something else with it. I don't want them to destroy that. I had that enough in my life. And he moved on. So you still see him around on this little electric scooter and moving around. Yeah, very good. I mean, that's again so iconic. When this was planned, I was working in Frankfurt in Germany at a newspaper. This is where I covered the whole story on 9/11. That was my first week where I made 17-hour shifts every day just to cover what was happening in this time. And when the project came out to build this memorial at the end, I was really rooting for this idea of all the ideas for the competition. I like this one the best, and I have to say it's rare that I went to see a memorial which touched me so much on a non-verbal level, just by the feel, not even by looking at it, but the combination of looking at things and hearing things and just getting this impression of a void. This is absolutely fabulously done, I thought. And I had to take a photo of this. Okay, so the second last part, we have 10 points, is for me it was the biggest fun to put this book together. I had about 150 contenders, which I wanted to have in the book, or I had space for. And how do you put this all together? You want to put this on pages in paper, and you have to let things swing a little bit. So they have to cooperate and work over the pages with each other. The Intrepid, very good. And the second one matching to this is the Peking. We had that before. And in the book, it looks like this at the end. So I started to combine things over either materials or shapes or patterns, or sometimes about colors. Where are we here? That's the conservatory in Central Park, right? Where you have the little model boats. That's where I usually open the season in the spring. Yeah, it's Manhattan Henge with the Empire State Building, obviously, and the sun setting.
Are those photographers in the middle? In front of you?
Let me see.
Right in the middle? Is those photographers right there?
Yes, down on the street, yeah. I tried to blend them out, but I couldn't get rid of all of them. So this is how it works in the book then together. So they have the repetition of shape and harsh contrasts and whatever. This view you probably know as New Yorkers. The roof of the Metropolitan. This is a Frank Stella sculpture. And again, it's a temporary photo because it changes every year. Every season we have somebody else up there. That was Frank Stella. And this is always there. Yeah, it is on the Queen's side, Silver Cup Studios. And this how it swings then on the paper in the book. at the end. And to conceive this, I took these 150 photos and threw them out on the floor, took a ladder and stepped up on the ladder and looked from above. And it was like playing memory as a child to see where are the matching pairs, how do we fit these things together. That's the planetarium again. We had that earlier. And there we are in the 50s. There's the Time Warner Center and Columbus Circle. So we have these two big eggs hanging there. And this was a scene at Christmas some years ago. We had snow and it got really, really warm at night. And this is Christmas night. And people were sitting outside in T-shirts in Tompkins Square Park. This is the Temperance Fountain, what you see in the middle. And there was this fog everywhere wavering through the park. It was absolutely beautiful. And this you probably know where we are. That was on the Facebook invitation.
No, Food Emporium.
Under the 59.
Food Emporium, 59th Street. Yeah, that's right. That's Queensboro Bridge.
Food Emporium.
Yeah, one of the fabulous Guastavino ceilings we have in the city. The Museum of the City of New York had recently an exhibition about Rafael Guastavino, who built more than 200 buildings in the city with these fantastic tiles. You can build them very thin and completely free in its shape. It was really revolutionary. And this was for a while an outside market. There was not even glass. It was all open. This you probably know with a different view when there was nothing behind it.
Very clever to do the Pepsi.
Yeah, to turn it around. I thought I'd make Cola Pepsi out of it this time. And the Apollo Theater, yeah, very good. I mean, we have some real buffs here today. I had other lectures where nobody could find out what this even was. So sometimes we work with colors and with shapes. This is Little Red Lighthouse under the Washington Bridge. And
Where were you standing for that shot?
oh, on the bridge. I'm shooting from right above, which is an interesting experience. I don't know if you as photographers ran into that. When you try to take photos of bridges, everybody stops you right away because you have First Amendment rights to do this. But on the other hand, it's getting limited by police or security, whatever. And on the Washington Bridge is even a little booth where somebody sits inside and has nothing else to do but to tell photographers off to take photos of the structure. Because you could use that for a terror attack. And I had that problem at the Queensboro Bridge as well, that people asked me not to take photo. Police cars stopped and said, you can't take photos here. Where you usually get away with saying, no, I didn't take a photo, I'm just walking here. So, but it's a bit tricky. So where are we here? That's at MoMA, the educational center, right? And a Ferrari hanging on the wall. And it was just fun to put these things together. I speed it up a little bit now. This is pretty much well known even to tourists, where you get your ring, 47th Street, right? Diamond District. And the match is down at the new museum on the Bowery, yeah. Okay. So you can work with materials and structures and combine that.
That's Tavern on the Green. No,
No, it's not. That's the UN building, yeah. And I don't know if you're aware of the funny backstory around this elephant. I have to look it up. It was 3 different countries who made this as a gift to the UN. I think it was Nigeria, Tibet, and the third one was another African country, but it was a weird conglomeration of countries. And Kofi Annan was General Secretary at that time, and even the Times reported on this, because the problem was, okay, it's a bronze elephant and there's nothing wrong with it, except this elephant was a male and he was pretty much endowed. So they thought, we can't put that inside. We have to put it in the garden somewhere. Where do we put it? Yeah, let's put it in that corner. And they said, yeah, but people see it from the street. And they didn't really know where to push this poor elephant around until Kofi Annan himself came up with the idea, build a hedge around him. So this is, build a hedge around him, and this is how they solved the problem.
Confucius Square.
Yeah, Chatham Square it is, but very good. It's not Confucius, that's Lin Je, who started the Opium Wars to get rid of the Brits and their opium dealings in China. And I thought they just worked very well together. Their stories are not intertwined at all, but they work optically very nicely together. This is again something where I think it's fantastic to go to Open House New York, because you get can get sometimes. Yeah, Highbridge Water Tower, very good.
Where's that?
That's up in, what is the street? Highbridge Park. It's all the way up in Harlem, and is it Harlem? No, it's not Harlem. Washington Heights. Oh, it's on the east side. It's on the Harlem River. It's on the Harlem River where the Highbridge, where the aqueduct comes over the Harlem River. It's around Yankee Stadium, but it's on the Manhattan side. It's this high water tower which you see standing there. And the bridge, which still brings in all our drinking water into Manhattan, is just reopened for pedestrians and bicyclists. So I haven't been there, but I know that Edgar Allan Poe was making regular walks over this bridge. And it was built on the model of the famous Pont du Gard in France, this Roman aqueduct by James Renwick, who also built the Smallpox Hospital and St. Patrick's Cathedral. So he had some very diverse projects here in the city. Amsterdam and East, 174th is the Highbridge Water Tower. Okay.
Williamsburg Bridge.
Williamsburg Bridge, very good. Famous for all kinds of things. What comes to mind for me is on Shabbat, it's the Hasidic Highway, is his nickname. And it's also the place where Sonny Rollins was working out to build up his lungs after he had this break in his career as a saxophone player. And he was living down the road on Delancey. And one of his neighbors was a lady which was very pregnant and really suffering. And he wanted to build up his lungs. And I said, I can't do that to her. So he walked for nearly a year out to the bridge and played against the wind and the traffic and the storm to build up his volume again. So that's why this bridge is always lovely. There's a whole album called The Bridge, which is his comeback album afterwards. So there's this Times Square, the famous Roy Lichtenstein, which was posthumous, so he was already dead before they hung this up. Yeah, I was there at 4 a.m. to make sure that nobody would run into the frame. It took me some effort to go there. Okay, that's pretty easy. I took it in for the combination where you see material works very well, the steel, the structure of it, the colors.
So does the little bit of red.
Mm-hmm.
The entire red.
Yeah, I think that's for some bank advertising.
Together,
Yeah. Okay, and we're nearly done. Last point is every picture should tell a story somehow. I'm sure you know where we are here. There's not too many. Yeah, exactly. And that is before they turned it all into LED, so this is the old lighting. But I thought it was just great with all the reflections that we can make it all, we can handle it all. And then this police cruiser pulls through right at the same, right in the right moment. So it's a big red, white, and blue on this whole frame. This is a very funny story. Does anybody have an idea where we are? On the High Line, very good. So you know this already. There was a painter living. Hiemi Cho is her name, a Japanese painter, who lived right on the level where everybody was walking by, and that added up to 30,000 people a day who were staring into her apartment. And unlike the people who have these aquarium buildings there with top to floor ceilings, glass windows, she wanted to be left alone. So this is not herself, but it's a painting of herself, because she needed protection from all these people gawking into her house. And she made for her neighbors, accordingly, these protective things people could put into their window when they wanted to be left alone. She's not there anymore. I think the house was in the process of being torn down the last time I walked by. So with the High Line, it's hard to keep up because every week it looks entirely different there. Yeah, that's the subway, the A train out to Rockaway, just going through Jamaica Bay. In the swing in the background, you see the JFK, the buildings from the airport, and it was pre-thunderstorm. And that was, again, the discovery I made on City Island in a place which is defunct now. That was one of the many seafood restaurants on the island, I thought, this is very touching because it is like fading memories, really. We all remember these buildings very well, but piece by piece it disappears. So, I think we are pretty much done. I have one last thing. I want to finish this with a quote of John Steinbeck, who said, "New York City is an ugly city, a dirty city. Its climate is a scandal. Its politics are used to frighten children. Its traffic is madness. Its competition is murderous. But once you have lived in New York and it has become your home, no place else is good enough." And I hope they keep it that way. Thank you very much.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.